There is a strange myth that great movies are impossible to find without subscriptions or expensive rentals. That myth dies here. Hidden in plain sight on YouTube are classic films that still shock, inspire, and outperform modern releases. These are not bargain bin leftovers. These are powerful, timeless stories waiting to be rediscovered tonight. Number 20, Psycho, 1960. When Psycho arrived, it did not simply scare audiences, it rewired how cinema creates fear. Alfred Hitchcock stripped suspense down to its bones and rebuilt it using silence, shadow, and control. Watching Psycho today feels less like viewing a movie and more like being trapped inside a carefully designed experiment. Every shot is deliberate. Every pause is a threat. The film refuses comfort and refuses safety. Anthony Perkins delivers a performance that remains one of the most unsettling in film history. Norman Bates is not a monster in the traditional sense. He is polite, awkward, gentle, and deeply broken. That contradiction is what makes the film endure. Psycho understands that real horror does not scream. It smiles, it watches, it waits. Hitchcock weaponizes the audience's expectations and then punishes them for trusting him. What makes Psycho especially powerful on YouTube is how raw it still feels without theater hype or cultural noise. Alone with the film, the tension feels intimate and invasive. The famous shower scene still lands with surgical precision, not because of gore, but because of rhythm, sound, and implication. Psycho remains proof that fear does not age when it is built correctly. Number 19, Roman Holiday, 1953. Roman Holiday is often mistaken for a simple romance, but beneath its charm lies a quiet tragedy about freedom, duty, and time slipping away. Audrey Hepburn enters cinema not as a star, but as a revelation. Her performance feels untrained, natural, and alive. She does not act royalty. She becomes someone briefly allowed to be human. Gregory Peck grounds the film with restraint rather than dominance, which gives the story emotional balance. Rome itself becomes a character not romanticized, but lived in. Streets are busy, cafes are loud, life moves forward, regardless of fairy tales. That realism gives the ending its power. Roman Holiday does not betray its audience with fantasy, it respects them with truth. Watching this film today on YouTube strips away decades of nostalgia marketing. What remains is a mature story about choices that cannot be undone. The final moments do not beg for tears, they earn them. Roman Holiday endures because it understands that the most painful goodbyes are the ones spoken politely. Number 18, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, 1975. Monty Python and the Holy Grail should not work. It breaks every rule of structure, pacing, and logic, yet somehow becomes immortal. The film is not interested in parodying medieval legends alone. It dismantles storytelling itself. Scenes end abruptly. Conflicts resolve with nonsense. Authority figures are mocked until they collapse. What makes the film timeless is not its jokes, but its fearlessness. It never explains itself. It never apologizes. It trusts the audience to either surrender or leave. That confidence gives the comedy power. Each viewing reveals new layers of absurdity hidden inside what appears to be chaos. On YouTube, the film feels oddly perfect. The rough edges, low-budget visuals, and handmade absurdity align with the platform's unpolished spirit. Holy Grail survives because it does not chase relevance, it ignores it, and in doing so, it remains endlessly watchable across generations. Number 17, The Truman Show, 1998. The Truman Show begins like a gentle comedy and slowly reveals itself as a quiet nightmare about control observation and manufactured reality. Jim Carrey delivers the most restrained performance of his career, proving that comedy can carry profound emotional weight. Truman is not searching for fame or power. He is searching for truth, even when that truth threatens everything he has ever known. The brilliance of the film lies in how ordinary the deception feels. Nothing is exaggerated. Nothing feels futuristic. The world Truman lives in looks comfortable, familiar, and safe, which makes the manipulation far more disturbing. Every smile hides surveillance. Every conversation is a script. The film understands that freedom is most easily stolen when comfort replaces curiosity. Watching The Truman Show today on YouTube adds another layer of relevance. In an age of constant visibility and curated lives, the film feels prophetic rather than satirical. It asks whether escape is still possible once the audience becomes complicit. The final choice Truman makes is simple yet terrifying. Walk into the unknown or stay where the lights are always on. Number 16. Full Metal Jacket, 1987. Full Metal Jacket is not a war movie in the traditional sense. It is a study of how systems erase identity and rebuild people into tools. Stanley Kubrick divides the film cleanly into two halves, training and combat, yet both feel like different versions of the same prison. The enemy is not only outside, it is internal and institutional. R. Lee Ermey delivers a performance so precise it feels less like acting and more like documentation. His presence dominates the first half with mechanical cruelty and relentless rhythm. The second half strips away authority and replaces it with confusion, noise, and moral decay. The soldiers are no longer shaped, they are abandoned. Watching Full Metal Jacket on YouTube removes spectacle and leaves intention. The film is cold-controlled and deliberately distant. Kubrick refuses heroism and rejects catharsis. Violence is not exciting. It is numbing. The film endures because it does not argue about war. It shows what war turns people into when belief is replaced with obedience. Number 15, Night of the Living Dead, 1968. Night of the Living Dead looks simple on the surface, but beneath its low-budget exterior lies one of the most influential films ever made. George Romero did not invent zombies as monsters. He redefined them as mirrors. The real horror is not the undead outside, but the living trapped inside with fear, mistrust, and division. The film's power comes from its refusal to comfort the audience. Characters argue, sabotage each other, and fail repeatedly. Leadership collapses under pressure. Reason is ignored. Romero presents chaos without a guiding hand, which makes every decision feel dangerous. The ending lands with brutal finality, denying hope or explanation. Watching Night of the Living Dead today on YouTube restores its rawness. Without restoration, polish, or theatrical framing, it feels like a warning rather than entertainment. The film captured social anxiety, racial tension, and institutional failure without naming them. That silence is why it still resonates. Horror ages well when it tells the truth indirectly and lets the audience discover it themselves. Number 14, Come and See, 1985. Come and See is not a war film meant to entertain or inspire. It exists to confront. From its opening moments, the film refuses distance and refuses safety. Director Elim Klimov traps the audience inside the collapsing innocence of a child and never allows escape. This is war stripped of strategy, glory, or meaning. It is terror experienced moment by moment, without explanation. The film follows a young boy pulled into the chaos of the Eastern Front, yet it never treats him as a hero. He is frightened, confused, and slowly erased by what he witnesses. His face changes before the audience realizes time has passed. Sound design replaces music. Silence becomes unbearable. Explosions feel distant and internal rather than cinematic. What makes Come and See especially devastating today is its honesty. The violence is not stylized. The cruelty is not exaggerated. The horror arrives through implication, expression, and emotional erosion. Watching it on YouTube alone removes the buffer of audience reaction and forces direct engagement. There is nowhere to hide from what the film shows or what it refuses to show. Come and See endures because it does not argue about war. It documents its effect on the human soul. The title is not an invitation, it is a warning. Number 13, The Heartbreak Kid, 1972. The Heartbreak Kid is one of the most uncomfortable comedies ever made because it refuses to soften its subject. This is not a love story. It is a character study about selfishness, entitlement, and emotional cowardice. Charles Grodin delivers a performance so natural it feels invasive. His character is not charming or villainous. He is familiar. Elaine May directs with surgical precision, allowing scenes to linger long past comfort. Awkward silences replace punchlines. Conversations spiral instead of resolving. The audience is forced to sit with behavior that modern films would excuse or redeem. There is no lesson offered. There is no growth promised. What makes the film remarkable is its honesty about desire. Love is not presented as noble. It is impulsive, shallow, and destructive. The protagonist mistakes obsession for destiny and entitlement for romance. Watching The Heartbreak Kid today feels shocking because it refuses irony. The comedy emerges from recognition, not exaggeration. On YouTube, the film plays like a recovered artifact. It feels sharper than many modern satires because it does not announce itself as satire. It simply observes and lets the audience react. That restraint makes it timeless and deeply unsettling. Number 12, The Peanut Butter Falcon, 2019. The Peanut Butter Falcon feels simple on the surface, yet carries emotional weight through sincerity rather than manipulation. The film centers on characters often overlooked by cinema and treats them with dignity instead of sentimentality. Zach Gottsagen does not perform innocence. He performs ambition, fear, and agency, which grounds the entire story. Shia LaBeouf delivers one of his most restrained performances, allowing vulnerability to replace volatility. Their relationship grows not through speeches, but shared movement, shared silence, and earned trust. The American South is presented as lived in rather than romanticized. Rivers, roads, and empty spaces feel like pathways rather than scenery. What sets the film apart is its refusal to rush emotional beats. Progress happens slowly, imperfectly, and sometimes painfully. Conflicts do not resolve cleanly. Growth comes through repetition, effort, and failure. Watching the film on YouTube removes festival branding and allows the story to stand alone. The Peanut Butter Falcon succeeds because it believes in its characters without elevating them into symbols. It reminds the audience that kindness does not need spectacle. It needs patience. That quiet confidence is why the film lingers long after it ends. Number 11. Tarzan and the Green Goddess, 1935. Tarzan and the Green Goddess represents the final echo of an era when adventure films relied on atmosphere, imagination, and physical presence rather than spectacle. Johnny Weissmuller embodies Tarzan not as a mythic superhero, but as a force of nature. His movement through the jungle feels instinctive and unpolished, which gives the film its grounding power. This is not fantasy escapism. It is pulp mythology built from sweat, danger, and momentum. The story unfolds with simplicity, yet the pacing carries urgency. Ritual danger and colonial tension move the narrative forward without excessive exposition. The jungle is not romanticized. It is unpredictable, hostile, and alive. Action scenes rely on timing and physicality rather than editing tricks. Every fall, swing, and struggle feels earned. Watching the film today on YouTube strips away studio framing and restores its raw adventure roots. What remains is a reminder of how early cinema trusted the audience to engage without explanation. The film moves quickly because it assumes curiosity rather than distraction. Tarzan and the Green Goddess endures because it understands its role. It does not aim for depth, it aims for momentum. That honesty gives it energy. In an age of bloated runtimes and endless lore, this lean, direct storytelling feels refreshing, powerful, and strangely modern. Number 10. Nosferatu, 1922. Nosferatu is not merely a horror film. It is a nightmare captured on celluloid before cinema learned how to soften fear. The imagery feels wrong by design. Shadows stretch unnaturally. Faces linger too long. Movement feels stiff, yet predatory. Max Schreck's performance as Count Orlok is not theatrical. It is invasive. Director F.W. Murnau uses silence as a weapon. Without dialogue, the audience is forced to watch body language, space, and contrast. Horror emerges slowly through framing rather than shock. Orlok does not chase. He appears. His presence contaminates the environment long before he acts. Watching Nosferatu on YouTube enhances its ghost-like quality. The film feels detached from time, floating freely without restoration gloss. Grain flicker, and imperfections become part of the experience. The absence of sound invites personal interpretation, making each viewing slightly different. What makes Nosferatu timeless is its commitment to mood over explanation. It does not explain evil, it presents it. The vampire is not tragic or seductive. He is decay made visible. That purity of intent gives the film its lasting power. Fear does not age when it is rooted in imagery rather than trend. Number 9, The Bishop's Wife, 1947. The Bishop's Wife appears gentle on the surface, yet beneath its warmth lies a thoughtful reflection on purpose, distraction, and quiet faith. Cary Grant plays an angel not as a divine authority, but as a calm observer guiding others without dominance. His performance is restrained, playful, and deeply human, which grounds the supernatural premise. The film explores marriage not through conflict, but through distance. The bishop loses himself in ambition while neglecting the people closest to him. The story does not punish him harshly. It simply allows him to see what he is becoming. That softness gives the message weight. Loretta Young brings emotional clarity to the film, portraying loneliness without bitterness. The dialogue moves gently, allowing moments to breathe. Humor emerges naturally rather than through punchlines. The film trusts tone over spectacle. Watching The Bishop's Wife on YouTube removes seasonal framing and reveals it as more than a holiday film. It becomes a meditation on balance, presence, and humility. Its message remains relevant because it avoids preaching. It suggests rather than insists. The Bishop's Wife endures because it believes kindness can be transformative. That belief never goes out of style. Number 8. Sherlock Jr., 1924. Sherlock Jr. is not just a silent comedy, it is one of the most imaginative films ever made about the act of watching movies itself. Buster Keaton plays a projectionist who dreams of becoming a detective, and in doing so, he quite literally steps into the screen. What follows is cinema folding in on itself decades before the concept had a name. Keaton's physical comedy is precise, dangerous, and emotionally grounded. Every gag is built on timing and spatial awareness rather than exaggeration. The famous sequence where the background shifts violently around him is not a trick for spectacle. It is a visual representation of disorientation, a man trying to find footing in a world that refuses stability. Keaton performed his own stunts, including moments that resulted in serious injury, and the camera never hides that risk. What makes Sherlock Jr. remarkable is its understanding of fantasy versus reality. The dream world inside the movie is confident, fluid, and heroic. The real world is awkward, punishing, and indifferent. Keaton never explains this contrast. He lets the audience feel it. Watching Sherlock Jr. on YouTube restores its magic. Without narration or musical cues telling you how to feel, the film becomes interactive. You lean forward, you anticipate movement, you participate. Nearly a century later, it remains a reminder that cinema's greatest power is not technology. It is imagination disciplined by craft. At number 7, The Lost World, 1925. The Lost World stands as one of the earliest examples of cinematic wonder created through innovation rather than scale. Long before digital effects, filmmakers relied on patience, craftsmanship, and imagination. Willis O'Brien's stop-motion creatures feel deliberate, tactile, and alive despite their limitations. That effort gives the film sincerity modern effects often lack. The story unfolds like an expedition journal. Discovery drives momentum rather than conflict. Characters react with awe, confusion, and fear, mirroring the audience response. The dinosaurs are not monsters by default. They are forces of nature introduced into a world unprepared for them. Watching The Lost World on YouTube emphasizes its handmade quality. Every frame reveals labor, intention, and trial. The effects do not aim for realism. They aim for believability within the story's logic. That distinction matters. The film matters because it proved cinema could visualize the impossible convincingly enough to inspire generations. Without The Lost World, there is no King Kong, no Jurassic Park, no modern creature cinema. Its influence outweighs its runtime. It remains a reminder that innovation begins with curiosity, not technology. Number 6, The Most Dangerous Game, 1932. The Most Dangerous Game is lean, ruthless, and unsettling in its simplicity. The premise is direct yet morally disturbing. A man hunted for sport by another man who believes intellect justifies cruelty. The film wastes no time explaining itself because it does not need to. The danger is immediate and personal. Leslie Banks delivers a chilling performance, grounded in calm confidence rather than madness. That restraint makes the antagonist terrifying. He is polite, educated, and utterly convinced of his superiority. The hero survives not through strength, but through adaptation, observation, and desperation. The film moves quickly because it trusts tension over exposition. Jungle environments become psychological traps. Every silence suggests proximity. Every pause invites fear. Watching it today on YouTube heightens its intimacy. The black and white imagery sharpens contrast between hunter and hunted, and what gives the film longevity is its subtext. It questions entitlement power and the morality of dominance. The story refuses to resolve neatly, leaving discomfort intact. The Most Dangerous Game endures because it understands that the scariest monsters are not supernatural, they are rational. Number 5, Maniac, 1934. Maniac is not a polished horror film, and that is precisely why it endures. Made on the fringes of the studio system, it feels unstable, unpredictable, and dangerous. The film blends pseudoscience insanity and shock imagery into something closer to a fever dream than a narrative. Scenes jump abruptly, logic fractures, tone shifts without warning. That lack of control becomes its defining strength. The story revolves around obsession experiments and moral collapse, but it refuses clear explanation. Characters drift in and out of sanity with little guidance. This creates a sense of unease that modern horror often struggles to replicate. The film does not ask the audience to understand. It asks them to endure. Watching Maniac on YouTube restores its outlaw quality. Without restoration or framing, it feels like a recovered artifact rather than entertainment. The crude effects and exaggerated performances feel raw rather than dated. The film captures a moment when censorship had not yet fully tightened and filmmakers tested how far they could go. Maniac matters not because it is refined, but because it is fearless. It represents a time when cinema experimented recklessly with taboo and discomfort. Horror does not always need elegance to work. Sometimes it only needs nerve. But number 4, Wild Wild Planet, 1966. Wild Wild Planet is pure imaginative excess filtered through mid-century anxiety. The film blends science fiction spectacle with political paranoia, creating a world where technology advances faster than morality. Its futuristic costumes and minimalist sets feel artificial yet deliberate. The unreality becomes part of the charm. The story unfolds like a warning rather than an adventure. Progress brings power but also detachment. Authority becomes abstract. Human connection fades. The film reflects fears of automation surveillance and loss of autonomy, common during the space race era. Beneath the camp lies unease. Watching Wild Wild Planet on YouTube emphasizes its cult appeal. The dubbed dialogue and stylized performances feel theatrical rather than immersive. That distance allows the themes to surface more clearly. The film is less about realism and more about concept. What makes the film surprisingly effective is its seriousness. It never winks at the audience. It commits fully to its vision, no matter how strange. That commitment allows modern viewers to appreciate it as speculative cinema rather than kitsch. It is a reminder that science fiction has always been a mirror for its time. Number 3, The Strange Woman, 1946. The Strange Woman is a film noir driven not by crime, but by desire and manipulation. Hedy Lamarr delivers one of her most complex performances, portraying ambition without apology. Her character does not seek survival. She seeks control. That honesty makes the film compelling and dangerous. The narrative unfolds slowly, allowing relationships to decay naturally. Power shifts through conversation rather than violence. Every decision feels intentional and self-serving. The film refuses moral simplicity. Characters are neither punished immediately nor rewarded fairly. Watching The Strange Woman on YouTube restores its shadowy intimacy. Low lighting and tight framing create emotional claustrophobia. The film feels smaller than epic noir, yet more personal. Desire becomes the central engine rather than fate. What gives the film longevity is its refusal to judge its protagonist. It presents ambition in a woman without framing it as pathology. That perspective was rare for its time and remains provocative. The Strange Woman endures because it understands that manipulation often looks like confidence, and that power rarely announces itself loudly. Number 2, Believed Enemy, 1920. Beloved Enemy emerges from the silent era with an emotional weight that feels surprisingly modern. The film is built around loyalty conflict and the cost of devotion in times of political unrest. Rather than relying on spectacle, it focuses on inner tension. Faces carry the drama, gestures replace dialogue, every glance becomes a decision. The story unfolds against a backdrop of revolution, yet it remains intimate rather than epic. Characters are torn between ideology and personal connection. There is no clear villain, only opposing beliefs colliding under pressure. This moral ambiguity gives the film its strength. It refuses to simplify history into heroes and traitors. Watching Beloved Enemy on YouTube strips away historical distance. The silent format invites concentration, forcing the audience to read emotion rather than listen for explanation. That engagement creates intimacy. The pacing is deliberate, allowing moments of hesitation and regret to linger. What makes the film endure is its understanding of divided loyalty. It recognizes that conflict does not begin on battlefields. It begins inside people asked to choose between belief and love. That theme never expires. Silent cinema often feels distant, but Beloved Enemy feels immediate because it trusts emotion more than spectacle. Number 1. Safety Last, 1923. Safety Last stands at the peak of silent-era storytelling because it understands escalation better than most modern films. Harold Lloyd constructs a narrative where ambition drives every action. His character wants success, not fame, and that clarity grounds the comedy in human desire. Each obstacle emerges naturally from previous choices. The structure of the film is architectural. Tension is layered carefully, floor by floor, moment by moment. The famous climb works because the audience understands consequence. There is no artificial danger. The risk is real and visible. Lloyd's performance balances optimism with desperation, creating empathy rather than spectacle. Watching Safety Last on YouTube removes orchestral cues and theatrical context, leaving pure visual storytelling. The stunt work feels closer, more immediate. The height feels real because it was. That authenticity cannot be replicated digitally. Safety Last endures because it respects the audience intelligence. It builds suspense visually and emotionally without instruction. Comedy emerges from circumstance, not chaos. It proves that silence does not limit storytelling. It sharpens it. That is why this film still feels alive a century later. These films prove that great cinema does not vanish. It waits. Hidden inside YouTube uploads and forgotten channels are stories that still challenge, inspire, and outshine modern releases. If you want more rediscovered classics like these, subscribe, explore, and keep watching. The past still has a lot to say.